First, discussion with Katie Pavlich, townhall.com news editor and Fox News contributor, and Geraldo Rivera, Fox News correspondent at large. Great to have both of you with us today. Geraldo, it sounds like you are sympathetic to Tlaib's argument here.
I am indeed, Martha. I think that people have to recognize what Gaza Strip is. It's one of the most menacing, melancholy places on earth that I've ever reported from. It's a 20-mile long strip of desert by the sea. 2 million Palestinians trapped inside by a brutal blockade enforced by Egypt on the southwest, Israel every place else. It's a crowded cesspool, highest unemployment on earth, over 50%. Everyone and everything going into and out of Gaza is controlled by Israel. Electricity, fuel, airspace, ports, cell phone service, even who gets to farm those meager fields they have. It's effectively one of the world's largest prison camps, and it's being bombed with bombs supplied by the United States of America. It's outrageous that we gave Israel these hundreds of millions of dollars worth of weapons without insisting on a ceasefire now. Why not a ceasefire now?
Katie, what about the money that has gone to the Iranian-backed Hamas? I mean, that there are U.S. dollars in those rockets that are flying towards Israel as well.
Well, first, I think it's important to go back in history for a moment and remind everybody that the Israelis gave the Palestinians the Gaza Strip in return for peace. And the only thing they've received since then are rockets, terrorist attacks, and kidnappings of innocent Israeli citizens. They also, when they made that deal, gave them a number of greenhouses, which the Palestinians then burned. And that's why they don't have farming resources in the Gaza Strip. But going to the current situation, Geraldo asked the question about why not demand a ceasefire now. To ask for a ceasefire from the Israelis at this point in time, because Hamas rockets are continuing to be fired, is essentially asking the Israelis to stop defending themselves from terrorist attacks. It is Hamas who is firing on aid convoys trying to get into Gaza, not the Israelis at this time. And then the bigger question, Martha, what you're asking is, will President Biden side with the left side of his party? And he already has, effectively, because of these negotiations that are ongoing in Vienna. And the Israelis can't afford a ceasefire right now. Hamas still has thousands of rockets that they can fire. Israel's facing this threat from the north, from Hezbollah. They're also facing this threat from the West Bank. And they're being used in two proxy wars, one from Iran and one between Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas, who are fighting for credibility and power in the West Bank. So at this point in time, Israel's doing what it can to defend its citizens, and asking for a ceasefire before Hamas has stopped is effectively saying we're willing to let Israeli lives be spent on behalf of a terrorist organization.
I mean, Geraldo, Israel is a tiny country that's surrounded by people who want it to not exist. We have always had Israel's always been our ally in this world. We have worked over the past 4 years. Just let me finish one more thing. To find a way to create more allies for Israel in the Middle East. We saw the Abraham Accords. We saw some really promising developments to try to strengthen their position and to promote peace in the Middle East. And now we are, I don't know, 5 months now into the Biden administration, and here's what we see. It's impossible not to see some of the behind-the-scenes efforts to re-enter a deal with Iran at play here.
We have dozens of Palestinian children who have been killed in the last week with American bombs. I have no proposed solution to this conflict. I have no proposed solution. Better minds than mine. Maybe General Jack Keane can help. And floundered, frustrated by this complexity. I know this, though, Martha, and I want our audience to, the fact that the United States of America is providing Israel many of the weapons Israel is using today to kill Palestinian civilians without even demanding a ceasefire. Tlaib is right. That makes us complicit in an ongoing crime against humanity.
Katie, last thought.
Geraldo, that is such a dishonest argument to make, to accuse the Israelis and the Americans of deliberately targeting civilians when we know, we have it on video, we've known this for decades, the Hamas deliberately places military targets in schools, in media buildings, in hospitals, and when the Israelis call them to say we're going to bomb, we're going to bomb We are going to, so you're justifying Hamas using human shields in order to make the argument exactly as you are. And you are saying exactly what the argument Hamas makes, which is Israelis kill civilians, which is
an Israeli F-16 going 500 miles an hour is going to kill civilians.
Hamas propaganda. You are repeating Hamas propaganda.
I am deeply experienced in that region. I am a Zionist. I am telling you how I feel.
When they go out of their way to stop civilians from being killed, Hamas purposely uses them as human shields. That is a known fact, and you are denying it.
All right, both sides.
You shoot an artillery round from a cannon. I mean, from a tank. And you expect it to land only on the military version of
that's one point, Geraldo, that is valid. But Katie's point is also valid in terms of burying the weaponry and defensive infrastructure in places where children will be killed if it's hit. I'm going to leave you guys with those thoughts. And